Honestly, we've been walking my mom home for quite a while. And what a gift to have the Walk Church to support us during this journey. My name is Emily Stroud, and I am the daughter of Frank and Carol Graham. And my parents have had the privilege of benefiting from the ministry of the Walk Church at the Westmore Senior Living. Church was very instrumental. It was our everyday. My dad was a deacon, my mom sang in the choir, and so that's all we knew. When my mom's health dictated that they really needed to make some major changes, they moved into the Westmore Senior Living.
After you've moved out of where you came from into this new environment, sometimes I've learned that it's difficult for seniors to want to re-engage and get to know new people.
It really was much harder to adjust to the new normal because they didn't have their church family. And that was the first time in 40 years that they hadn't been active members of a church. My dad just kept saying, it's just not the same. It's just not the same. You don't meet new friends when you're 75 or 80.
So I can't remember the exact day or the exact Sunday. They just started leaning in, being a part of the congregation, a part of the church.
All they had to do was walk down the hall and meet with other people that were also craving connection spiritually, and that became their new group. And Jay became their new minister. And it wasn't just a, hey, see ya on Sunday. They had a true relationship with Jay.
Miss Carol, she was always so joyful. She always had a kind word to say after service. And when Frank reaches over and grabs your shoulder and just brings you in, it just had an impact on me.
When he first met Jay and they hit it off and they had common backgrounds and passion for ministry, it was almost more of a gift to my dad than it was to my mom.
When I learned more about their story, how God had used them to do something that had never been done, I intentionally leaned in to be fed by their experiences.
My dad had spent many years already doing prison ministry on the weekends and decided that he was going to quit his day job and go into full-time prison ministry. They built 8 chapels behind prison fences in Texas state prison system. Over 1 million inmates have come to those chapels. My dad and Jay hit it off so well because they both had a vision for a ministry that most people didn't know anything about or ever thought of as far as a population of people that had an unmet need.
To have that kind of up-close, personal friendship with somebody who's been there, done that, and can tell the story was very, very inspiring. It was very, very needful.
I think it gave him purpose and thinking like, God's still using me right now. This is not the end. It was such a blessing to me to see him excited again, having a place where he could lead a Bible study, and people were wanting him to be in a leadership role, and he had missed that.
We all would sit around with Bibles open, and then Frank would just launch into expounding on what the Word of God was saying. God sent Frank and Carol for that moment in our church's history to bring that congregation together.
So my mom's journey with Alzheimer's has been a long battle. The reality is, as a person progresses with significant health challenges, they can't easily get up out of bed and get dressed and get meds and get care that they need.
There was a time when Carol began to noticeably begin to decline, and she could tell that she was declining. Even through that, she continued to be a light, continued to be an encouragement, and she'd still come up and give me that big smile and say, "Thanks for coming to see us today."
One of the hardest challenges in the last few years, especially with my mom and my dad, is making really difficult decisions.
We got to help walk with the family as they made the decision to transition Carol into the memory care department. I would finish the service in assisted living, and then I would go back to the memory care department to provide a church service where Carol was now living, where she'd be laying there asleep, but then I'd pat her on her shoulder and say, "Hey, Miss Carol, it's Pastor Jay." She'd light up and smile. And still, as much as she could give me, she'd give me that smile. She would do her best to still clap and sing and engage in the service. Even as her body was declining, her spirit continued to reach out to the Lord.
To have a minister and a pastor to come alongside you and say, "Hey, I see you," that was such a ministry. I can't tell you how many times he showed up unannounced at different times, whether it was a hospital visit or he was there with my mom and dad after she passed.
I had the opportunity to go to the facility and just be in the room with Frank and Emily. And we had a moment to just pray and thank God for Miss Carol and thank God for her life.
My mom was a bright light. She just had such a sweet spirit, and she loved God. She walked such a faithful walk until the very end, and she never lost her joy. She lived life well.
When we were discussing my role in the service, Emily asked me if I could sing the song, "The Blessing." It wasn't until I was in the service till I understood what Emily meant. The blessing over that family. May his blessing be upon you to 1,000 generations, to your family, to your children, and your children, and your children. And as I looked over the crowd and I saw Frank and Carol's children and their children and their children, God sends people into each other's lives for these moments to walk with Frank, to walk with Carol, to walk with Emily, with the rest of the family. It's been an honor.